Welcome to today's lesson. We're talking about the Southern accent. So the first thing that I want to say is that this is a very well-known and distinct accent. I'm sure you may have heard it before.
My mom always said life was like a box of chocolates.
Now, before we begin, I'd like to ask you, please hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications so that I get to be your teacher. Throughout the lesson, I'm going to try to break down the Southern accent a little bit at a time. And not all Southern accents are the same. Most notably, I think the South is known for either the Southern drawl, that deep South accent. There's also a Southern twang, which is a bit more nasally, but I'm going to be talking more about that deep South, that Southern drawl. And it's not like you either have the accent or you don't. There is a sliding scale. The first thing that I think people think of when they think of that Southern accent, that Southern drawl, is how slow it is, that it's a bit slower, because that drawl is kind of when you drag out some of those sounds, especially those vowel sounds, all right? There's really two things that are going on. You're taking a pure vowel sound and you're turning it into a diphthong, and you may also be prolonging some of those stress syllables. So let's first talk about diphthongs, because I think this is very important in understanding why the Southern accent is a bit slower. If you do not know what a diphthong is, it is a sound formed by the combination of two vowels in a single syllable. So I do not want to go into the weeds talking to you about diphthongs, but here is an example of a diphthong, and it's going to create that ow sound. So you might see it with the combination of vowels like OU in sound. Now in the South, it's common to create diphthongs with the short vowel sounds a, and I. And you're going to follow it with an off-glide schwa sound. So schwa is that sound. If we start with a and we have the word hat, in the South I would say hat. I'm going to follow it with that off-glide schwa. If I have the word pet, pet, sit, sit. So again, listen for that diphthong, that short vowel sound followed by that slight schwa sound. Hat, pet, sit. So I think this becomes, really noticeable when you hear people say like some very common words. Let's take the verb have. It's a verb that you're going to use quite often just in everyday conversation. But instead of saying have, I would say have. And you might hear somebody say, y'all have a great day. And it's part of Southern hospitality. And notice that I used y'all, which is the contracted form of you all, which is kind of like saying like you guys, you're talking to a group of people. Now this is more Southern dialect as opposed to accent. And throughout the lesson, I am going to throw in some Southern dialect, because I think it'll help give you a better overall understanding of the Southern accent. Now let's go back to talking about diphthongs, because not all diphthongs in the South are going to be followed by that off-glide schwa sound. So let's have a look at this word right here, dog. Instead, we're going to have a diphthong that's going to sound more like aw, dog, dog, dog. All right, you can kind of hear it stretching out a little bit with that diphthong. Dog, dog. In Georgia, there is a famous university, the University of Georgia. Their mascot is the bulldog. And when talking about the university, especially like the sports teams, they'll refer to them as the Dogs. And they'll even spell it D-A-W-G, kind of capturing that Southern accent, that Southern drawl. Dog. So let's use some of these diphthongs in a sentence. If I were to say, I can't believe you guys have a dog. I'll use that off-glide schwa in words like can't and have. I'm going to change you guys to y'all and dog to dog. And it's going to sound like, I can't believe y'all have a dog. I can't believe y'all have a dog. The other thing that you may have noticed is that when I said believe, I'm kind of prolonging that stress syllable, that second syllable, believe. This is not something that's going to happen with every word. I think it may happen more often with like two-syllable words. When the stress is on that first syllable, you're going to prolong it. And then you're even going to weaken the unstressed syllable. If you have the word like mama, all right? The stress is on the first syllable. But if I were to say this with a Southern accent, prolong that first syllable, mama, mama. All right, it's much stronger than that second syllable. Now, I think something that's even more important when talking about syllable stress, which really doesn't have to do with making it sound slower, but this is just something that people do with the Southern accent, is that they will switch the stress to the first syllable. I think there are some words that are fairly well known that people do this with, but if you were to spend time there and just listen to the accent, I think this is something you might pick up on. So let's talk about some of those words that I think are a bit more well known. So instead of July, people say July.
I want to see my daddy for the first time ever on July 14th.
Insurance, insurance. Umbrella, umbrella. Police, police. Guitar, guitar. Halloween, Halloween. And then to give you a sentence, Halloween ain't in July. And I use the contraction ain't, which is another part of Southern dialect. This is something that you will hear. And it's a contracted form of, well, it has a lot of forms. Is not, are not, am not, has not, have not. It could be any of those. Halloween ain't in July. Something else that changes with the Southern accent is the mixing of vowel sounds. And I think this especially happens with and I. So instead of saying get, people would say git. Instead of pen, pin. 10, tin. I have 10 dogs. 10 dogs, can you believe it? And I ain't got one guitar, but I plan to get a guitar. Maybe I'll get a guitar for Halloween. Now, that doesn't make much sense, but you get the idea. You could hear those diphthongs, you could hear the syllable stress change to the first syllable, and you could hear the mixing of some of those vowel sounds. Something else, which you may have heard, which is also very common with the Southern accent, is the way I was pronouncing I. So when you're pronouncing words like I and my, you're not really going to use the long I sound. It's going to sound more like ah. I have an umbrella, but my umbrella ain't opening. So of course, I and my are very common words, so this might be something that's a little more easily noticeable. Another difference with the Southern accent is the soft R that you might find at the end of some words, especially when it follows a vowel sound, like the word fire becomes fire. Last night, my house was on fire. Thankfully, we have insurance. Then I want to talk to you about words that end with LLOW. There are not a lot of words out there, but when you do have words like this, instead of pronouncing it low, you're going to hear people say la. So yellow becomes yella. Fellow becomes fella. And fellow is an informal word talking about like a man or a boy.
The fellow that plays a guitar.
But it is a little more common in the South, and people would pronounce it fella. That fella's got a yellow hat. That fella's got a yellow hat. Another thing I want to point out is I've used that reduction, gotta. Instead of got a, I just said gotta. This is something else that I think is pretty common throughout the South. Gonna, wanna, have to, gotta, let me, oughta. People are going to use reductions in spoken English. And it's something that's pretty common throughout the United States in general, but just, keep that in mind. You're definitely going to hear this in the South. And then I want to talk to you about something else that I think it's well known in the South, the way people speak, part of that accent, and that is they're going to drop the G at the end of ing words, like those words in the continuous tense.
I'm just dusting the bulbs, Miss Daisy.
Again, this is something that I think is pretty common throughout the United States in all U.S. accents, but in the South, it is definitely something that people will do. So I could say, I was pitching a fit when the police came. I was pitching a fit when the police came. Now, to pitch a fit is a phrase that means to complain. This is actually something that I use, and I still use it. I didn't even realize it was part of Southern dialect, but I guess it is. I was pitching a fit when the police came. I realize some of these example sentences are quite ridiculous. I really just wanted you to hear the different parts of the Southern accent so you can better understand why it is the way it is. And I hope you could hear the difference when I would say the sentence more with a standard American accent and versus the Southern accent, that Southern drawl. So I thank y'all for watching. Please hit that like button. Write to me down in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you. And I got to get going. So I'll see you next time. So long.